I'd like to tell you a story about a man who persevered, who was faithful in spite of everything that was going against him. He stuck it out. Young Audie Murphy did not have much going for him. All of his life he had lived in rank poverty. His father, a poor sharecropper in Texas, had 12 children before leaving his family. Conditions were so dire for Audie's family that they lived in an old railroad car and later a broken down house. Audie quit school in 5th grade so he could work, help, and support his younger brothers and sisters. His father left home never to return. Within a year, his mother was dead, and Audie was heartbroken over his mom's death, and he missed her terribly. As a youngster, he learns that he could help feed his family by hunting. He was so poor that at times he could only afford to buy one bullet, and he could not afford to miss. If his family was going to eat, in a very real sense, his brother and sister's survival seemed to rely on what he could do with that one bullet. He became very good with a rifle, and seldom did he miss. So Audie Murphy was an emotional boy with a fierce Irish temper. He was constantly in fights. The other kids made fun of him, and they called him short britches because his old pants had shrunk. He could not afford to buy new ones. The bullies picked on him because he was small. And when World War II broke out, Audie was quick to volunteer. The armed services, for their part, were just as quick to reject him. The Marine Corps told him he was too small. He was 5'5". I'm like 6'2", so about this tall, maybe a little taller. About so 5'5", and he was not tough enough, weighing a mere 110 pounds. This is what the Army told him, or the Marine Corps told him. But the paratroopers told him to go home, drink milk, and eat bananas. Gee, thanks. Months later, the Army infantry finally accepted him. At basic training, they called him baby because of his small size and youthful face. And during the first day of training, he passed out. The Army felt he was too weak for combat and tried to make a cook out of him. There's an old expression in the South. It's not so much the size of the dog in the fight as it is the size of the fight in the dog. Murphy would go on to surprise a lot of people. His brief career in the Army would showcase just how much fight truly was inside of him. He fought in Sicily, Anzio, France, and Germany. His acts of personal heroism were too numerous to count. He was given battlefield promotions from private all the way up to first lieutenant. On January 26, 1945, Murphy was in command of Company B. His orders were to hold their position. His company had been fighting in foxholes in winter weather for months. His unit had been beaten down to just 18 men, and he was the only officer left. The Germans were fighting desperately to keep from being completely encircled by the Allies. Maybe the German scouts had concluded that Company B was the weakest point in the American lines. If so, they would soon learn never to underestimate Lieutenant Audie Murphy. At 2 p.m., Murphy and his 18 men saw, to their horror, 6 German Mark 6 Tiger tanks and approximately 250 soldiers coming straight for them. Murphy only had 2 tanks to support him. The German artillery quickly covered Murphy's area with exploding shells. One of the American tanks exploded into flames. The second American tank slid into a snowy ditch as it tried to turn around to escape. The crew climbed out, and the tank was now helpless as they fled. Murphy and his 18 men were left to defend their position alone. Realizing their obvious advantage, the 6 German tanks and their 250 soldiers quickly charged Murphy's position. Murphy first ordered his men to move to the rear, but they refused to leave, so he yelled at them, "Get out of here! That's an order!" Next, Murphy grabbed the field telephone equipment and called in Allied artillery fire. And as the Allied shells started to crash in, Murphy fired his rifle. He continued to fire his rifle until it was out of ammunition. He then grabbed the field telephone equipment with him and climbed on top of the burning American tank. There was a perfectly good 50 caliber machine gun up there, and nobody was around to use it. He reasoned that the smoke it created would make it difficult for the Germans to get a good shot at him. There was that small probability that the vehicle was full of gasoline and live ammunition, making an explosion highly likely. But Murphy continued to hold the phone as he called in more and more artillery down upon the Germans while he fired that machine gun. Ironically, the Germans were reluctant to get too close because they figured his tank would explode at any minute. But as he continued to call in out artillery fire by the machine gun, they finally came at him with a vengeance. Murphy called in the Allied artillery fire right in front of him. Their officer at the other end of the phone lines became alarmed at the coordinates Murphy gave him over the phone. "How close are those Germans?" the artilleryman asked. "Hold the phone!" Murphy responded. "I'll let you talk to them!" Murphy's tank was just then hit twice by German tank cannons. Murphy fell each time, but got up just as quickly and continued to fire that machine gun. At one point, the other officer on the other end of the line said, "Murphy, are you still alive?" "Momentarily," he responded. Then the German tanks finally came right up on top of him, and Murphy called in for the Allied artillery fire to fall down on himself. At this point, the officer on the other end of the phone line objected. "Those coordinates are your position. Let her go," Murphy responded. "I'm leaving." And with that, Murphy jumped off the burning American tank and ran back to join his men. As Murphy was running, he looked down and noticed that at his blood-soaked pants leg, the wound he had taken the day before from the mortar explosion had ripped open again. But Murphy refused to go to the medic aid station because he refused to leave his men. He had treated and bandaged it himself. And as Murphy was running, the tank destroyer he had been fighting on suddenly exploded into flames, and it shot out in all directions. The explosion sent Lieutenant Murphy crashing to the ground. Then Murphy got up, went into the woods, gathered his 18 men, and led them forward to take prisoners as the German tanks and their 200 soldiers were in full retreat. He had single-handedly turned back the attack. But within 24 hours, his company took the nearby town. And this effectively eliminated any possibility that the German army could escape encirclement. His actions greatly shortened the duration of the war and doubtlessly saved the lives of many American soldiers. And for his acts of extraordinary bravery, Lieutenant Murphy was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor on June 2nd, 1945. And by the end of World War II, Murphy would be awarded with the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, the 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars, and all he was awarded, presented with 33 medals and citations. He was the most decorated soldier in all of World War II. The most decorated soldier of all of World War II was a man who had been told that he was too small to be a Marine. He had been rejected by the Army at first because he wasn't tough enough. This despite the fact that the man who returned to the United States on June 13th, 1945 was still not old enough to vote. So, gentlemen, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what anybody else says or thinks about you. God has great plans for you. It doesn't matter how small you might be, how inexperienced or how weak you might feel. You will be used by the Lord to accomplish many exploits. Get ready. All right?